When Maya discovers her billionaire boss has been hiding a deadly secret, one kiss changes everything. But what happens when love lies and family collide in the most devastating way possible? Hello, beautiful souls? Tonight's story will take you on a journey where hearts are tested and destinies collide. So, let's begin this tale together. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 47th floor, each drop exploding like tiny grenades against the glass. Maya Chen stared at the storm brewing over the city below, her reflection ghost-like in the darkened pane. The thunderclap that followed made her jump, spilling coffee across the contract she'd been reviewing for the past 3 hours. "Damn it," she whispered, dabbing at the papers with trembling hands. Maya had been Kane Industries' lead contract negotiator for 2 years. Ever since she'd clawed her way out of the legal aid clinic where she'd spent her nights defending people who couldn't afford justice. The irony wasn't lost on her that she now worked for the kind of corporation she used to fight against. But the salary was enough to keep her younger sister Lila in the private treatment facility she desperately needed. The elevator chimed behind her, and Maya didn't need to turn around to know who had arrived. The entire floor seemed to shift when Damien Kane entered a room. At 36, he commanded his empire with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a warlord. His footsteps echoed across the marble floor as he approached her desk. "Working late again, Miss Chen?" His voice carried that familiar edge of authority, mixed with something else she couldn't quite identify. Maya turned to face him, noting how his charcoal suit fit perfectly across his broad shoulders. How his steel-gray eyes seemed to see through every defense she'd carefully constructed. "The Meridian deal won't close itself, Mr. Kane." Moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, mixed with the scent of rain from his brief walk between the car and the building. "You've been here until midnight every night this week? It's dedication bordering on obsession." "Some of us can't afford to fail," Maya replied, her voice sharper than intended. Something flickered across Damien's face. "Or understanding." "No," he said quietly. "Some of us can't." The lights flickered as thunder crashed overhead again. And in that brief moment of darkness, Maya saw something in Damien's expression that made her breath catch. Vulnerability. Pain. The same haunted look she saw in her own mirror every morning. When the light steadied, his mask was back in place. "I need you to cancel the Meridian deal," Damien said, his voice returning to its usual commanding tone. Maya stared at him in disbelief. "Cancel it? We've been working on this for 8 months. It's worth $40 million. Cancel it tonight. Destroy every document. Make it disappear completely." "I don't understand." "This deal could change everything for the company." "Why would you?" Damien's phone buzzed, and his face went ashen as he read the message. His hands, Maya noticed, were shaking almost imperceptibly. "Because," he said, his voice barely audible. "Above the storm, if that deal goes through, people are going to die." Maya's fingers froze over her keyboard. The Meridian documents glowed on her screen like evidence of a crime she didn't yet understand. Outside, the storm had intensified, turning the windows into rivers of distorted light from the city below. "People are going to die?" Maya repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you talking about?" Damien moved to the window, his reflection overlapping with hers in the glass. For a moment, they looked like two ghosts haunting the same space. "How much do you know about Meridian Industries?" "They're a chemical manufacturing company. Agricultural pesticides, industrial solvents. The contract covers a partnership for overseas distribution." Maya paused, studying his profile.
"Oh, what?"
"Aren't you telling me?" Damien turned away from the window, and in the ambient lighting of the office, Maya could see new lines of stress around his eyes. Lines that hadn't been there a week ago. "Meridian doesn't just make pesticides," he said. 3 years ago, they developed a chemical compound called MX-47. Officially, it's listed as a soil enhancement product. Unofficially, it's a weapon. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. A weapon? The kind that makes entire villages disappear without leaving. Obvious evidence. The kind that certain governments pay very well for. Damien's voice was hollow, distant. "The partnership we've been negotiating would give them access to shipping routes through our freight division, routes that bypass international inspection. Protocols. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in around them. Maya thought about the months she'd spent crafting this deal, the pride she'd felt in her meticulous work. You've known this entire time? I found out 3 days ago. Damien pulled a flash drive from his jacket pocket. One of our board members, Richard Vaughn, approached me with this information, said if I didn't sign the Meridian deal, he'd destroy everything I've built. Maya stared at the small device in his hand. He's blackmailing you, Vaughn has. Been embezzling from the company for years. Small amounts, cleverly hidden, but enough to put me in prison if it comes to light. He's made it look like I authorized every transaction. The weight of the revelation settled over Maya like ice water. She thought about Lila, about the treatment facility that cost $8,000 a month, about the job that made that possible. So you're choosing to let the deal go through? No. Damien's voice was firm. I'm choosing to destroy my company rather than become a war criminal. Lightning illuminated the office in stark white, and Maya saw something in Damien's face that she recognized from her own darkest moments. The look of someone who had lost everything that mattered and was preparing to lose everything else. There has to be another way, Maya said. Damien laughed, but there was no humor in it. The only other way is to expose Vaughn before he can expose me, but that would require evidence I don't have access to. Maya's mind began working, processing possibilities and risks with the same precision she brought to contract negotiations. What if you did have access? Maya, don't even think about it. If Vaughn realizes we're investigating him, he won't realize anything if we're careful. Maya moved closer to Damien, close enough to see her own reflection in his eyes. Vaughn's office is 2 floors down. His assistant leaves at 6 every night. The security cameras in that corridor have been broken for a week. How do you know about the cameras? Because I notice things. Maya reached for the flash drive in his hand, her fingers brushing against his palm. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her. God. Because I've been watching you watch me for months, Damien. Because I know you're not the cold bastard everyone thinks you are. Damien's hand closed around hers, warm and surprisingly gentle. Maya, if we get caught, we'll face it together. She looked directly into his eyes. But if we don't try, how many people die because we were too afraid to act? The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the office in an eerie red glow. In the distance, they could hear security alarms beginning to sound throughout the building. Damien's grip on her hand tightened. The storm must have hit the main power grid. The whole district is probably down. Maya smiled for the first time in days, and it transformed her entire face. Or it's the perfect cover for 2 people who need to be somewhere they shouldn't be. As if summoned by her words, the elevator doors across the office opened with a soft chime. But the figure who stepped out wasn't security or a maintenance worker. It was Richard Vaughn, and he was holding a gun. The emergency lighting cast long shadows across the office floor, turning familiar furniture into sinister shapes. Richard Vaughn stepped forward, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the chaos outside. The gun in his hand looked almost casual, like another expensive accessory. Working late, Damien? Vaughn's voice carried the same smooth charm he used in board meetings. And Miss Chen, how unexpected to find you both here during a power outage. Maya felt Damien's hand tighten protectively around hers. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her legal training kicked in, analyzing the situation with cold precision. Vaughn was blocking the elevator. The stairwell was across the office. It's too far to reach. Richard, Damien said carefully, stepping slightly in front of Maya. What brings you here so late? Vaughn chuckled, moving closer with predatory grace. I received an interesting call from building security. Apparently someone accessed my office floor about 20 minutes ago. Someone with executive clearance, his gray eyes fixed on Damien. Imagine my surprise. Maya's pulse quickened. They hadn't even attempted to search Vaughn's office yet, but somehow he knew they were planning. 2. You've been watching us, smart girl. Vaughn's smile was razor sharp. I've had surveillance on both of you for weeks. Every conversation, every glance, every moment of this touching little romance developing between boss and employee. Weight of violation settled over Maya like a physical blow. You sick bastard. Careful, Miss Chen. Your position here is more precarious than you realize. Vaughn reached into his jacket with his free hand and pulled out a tablet. Perhaps you'd both like to see what I've discovered about your family situation. Screen showed a photograph of Leela in her treatment facility, smiling at a nurse during what looked like a therapy session. Maya's knees went weak. Your sister is making remarkable progress at Hillcrest Treatment Center, Vaughn continued conversationally. Such an expensive facility. $8,000 a month, if I'm not mistaken. It's quite a burden for someone on your salary. Leave my family out of this, Maya said through gritted teeth. Family is everything, isn't it? Vaughn swiped to another photo, this one showing Maya's parents' grave. Your parents' death was such a tragedy. The drunk driver who hit them never did face proper justice, did he? Damien moved closer to Maya, his presence a shield against Vaughn's psychological assault. What do you want, Richard? What I've always wanted. The Meridian deal signed and executed. Tonight, Vaughn's expression hardened. You see, my partners are becoming impatient. They've invested considerable resources in this arrangement, and they don't appreciate delays. Partners? Maya's legal mind seized on the detail. You're not working alone, Vaughn laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Did you really think this was just about embezzlement? Damien, your naivety is almost charming. This company has been a front for arms trafficking for 3 years. The Meridian deal is just the largest transaction yet. The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. Every contract she'd negotiated, every deal she'd facilitated, had potentially contributed to violence somewhere in the world. The shipping. Manifests, she whispered. All those expedited overseas shipments with restricted cargo classifications. Oh, you're beginning to understand. Vaughn moved closer, and Maya could smell expensive whiskey on his breath. You've both been complicit from the beginning. The only question now is whether you'll continue to be useful. Damien stepped forward, putting himself directly between Maya and the gun. Let her go. This is between us. How noble. But I'm afraid. Miss Chen has become far too valuable to lose. Vaughn's smile was predatory. You see, she has something I need. Access to the Meridian documents is just the beginning. Her sister's medical records show some very interesting genetic markers. Markers that would make her an ideal test subject for our next venture. Maya felt the world tilt sideways. Test subject? The chemical compounds we've been developing? Require human trials. Your sister's particular neurological condition makes her brain chemistry unique, valuable. Rage flooded through Maya like molten metal. You stay away from her. That depends entirely on your cooperation. Vaughn raised the gun slightly. Sign the Meridian contract, Miss Chen. Right now, your sister continues receiving the best. Medical care money can buy. Refuse, and I make one phone call that will have her transferred to a state facility by morning. Maya looked at Damien, seeing her own desperation reflected in his eyes. The storm outside seemed to echo the chaos inside her mind. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed, had led to this moment. There's a third option, Damien said quietly. Vaughn raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Damien reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small recording device. This conversation has been broadcast live to the FBI field office downtown. Agents are already in the building. Vaughn's face went white with fury. You're lying. Ask yourself why the power really went out tonight, Richard. Ask yourself why the security cameras stopped working at exactly the right time. In the distance, Maya could hear new sounds. Footsteps in the stairwell, voices calling out commands. The soft whir of helicopter blades approaching through the storm. Vaughn's hand tightened on the gun, his composure finally cracking. If I'm going down, I'm taking both of you with me. But as he raised the weapon, Maya realized that Damien hadn't just been protecting her tonight. He'd been protecting himself too. And the look in his eyes as federal agents burst through the stairwell door told her that everything she thought she knew about Damien Kane was about to change forever. The FBI tactical team flooded the office like a dark tide, their movements precise and coordinated. Maya watched in stunned silence as they surrounded Vaughn, weapons drawn, voices sharp with authority. But something felt wrong. The timing was too perfect, the operation too smooth. Special Agent Sarah Morrison, FBI, the lead agent announced, approaching Damien with practiced efficiency. Mr. Kane, thank you for your cooperation. Maya's blood turned to ice water in her veins. Cooperation? Damien wouldn't meet her eyes. Maya, I can explain. Mr. Kane has been working with federal authorities for 8 months. Agent Morrison continued, securing Vaughn's weapon, while other agents restrained him. His intelligence gathering has been instrumental in dismantling this trafficking network. Office spun around Maya like a kaleidoscope of betrayal.
8 months?
But you said you only found out 3 days ago. Maya. Damien reached for her, but she stepped back as if his touch would burn her. You've been undercover this entire time? Her voice was hollow, distant. Everything between us, every conversation, every moment, I thought was real. It was real, Damien said desperately. Maya, please listen to me. Yes, I've been working with the FBI, but my feelings for you, your feelings. Maya laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. Was seducing the lead contract negotiator part of your mission briefing? Keep the lawyer close, so she doesn't ask to. Many questions? Agent Morrison stepped between them. Miss Chen, I need to inform you that you're not under arrest, but we will require your testimony regarding your involvement with these contracts. My involvement? Maya turned on the agent, fury blazing in her dark eyes. I had no idea what those contracts were really for. I was manipulated by everyone in this room. Vaughn, now in handcuffs, began to laugh. Sound echoed off the windows like the storm outside. Oh, this is rich. You really didn't tell her, did you, Damien? Shut up, Richard, Damien warned. Tell me what? Maya demanded. Vaughn's smile was vicious. About your sister. About why she's really at that treatment facility. About who's been paying for her care all these years. Maya felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. What is he talking about? Agent Morrison consulted her tablet. Miss Chen, according to our investigation, your sister's medical expenses have been covered by a shell company linked to Kane Industries. The payments began 5 years ago, shortly after your parents' death. The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. 5 years ago, before I even worked here, the drunk driver who killed your parents, Vaughn continued with sadistic pleasure, was driving a company vehicle. One of our freight trucks. The accident was caused by brake failure due to deferred maintenance that Damien personally authorized. To save costs. Maya's vision blurred. She reached for the desk to steady herself, but even that familiar anchor felt unstable now. No, that's not possible. It's true, Damien said quietly, his voice breaking. Maya, I've been trying to find the right way to tell you. The guilt has been eating me alive for years, so you hired me. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. You brought me into your company, made me dependent on you, made me fall in love with you, all because you killed my parents. I never meant for any of this to happen. When I found out about the trafficking, when I realized Vaughn was using my company for his operations, I had to act. But I also had to protect you. Protect me. Maya turned to face him, and Damien took an involuntary step back at the fury in her eyes. You destroyed my entire life, and then made me grateful for the scraps you threw me. The storm outside had reached its peak, lightning illuminating the office in stark, momentary brightness. In those flashes, Maya saw everything clearly for the first time. Her carefully constructed life was built on a foundation of lies, guilt, and manipulation. Agent. Morrison's radio crackled. We've got the rest of the network in custody. Meridian Industries executives are being arrested simultaneously in 3 countries. What happens now? Maya asked, her voice hollow. Now we clean up the mess, Morrison replied. Mr. Kane will likely face charges related to the original accident, despite his cooperation with our investigation. The company assets will be frozen, pending a full audit. Maya thought about Leela, about the treatment that had been keeping her stable for years, about the future that was crumbling around them both, and my sister's care. It's no longer guaranteed, Morrison said with clinical detachment. Damien moved closer, his face desperate. Maya, I have personal assets that aren't tied to the company. I can still take care of Lila's medical needs. Nothing has to change for her. Nothing has to change. Maya's laugh was bitter. Everything has changed. Damien, everything was always a lie. The elevator doors opened again, and paramedics entered with a stretcher. Maya realized with growing horror that one of them was heading straight for her. "Miss Chen?" the paramedic asked. "We received a call about a medical emergency involving your sister at Hillcrest Treatment Center. You need to come with us immediately." Maya's knees gave out completely. Damien caught her before she could fall, his arms strong and warm and familiar. For a moment, she let herself lean into him, drawing strength from the man who had destroyed her life and saved it simultaneously. "This isn't over," she whispered against his chest, and she wasn't sure if it was a threat or a promise. But as the paramedics helped her toward the elevator, Maya looked back at Damien one last time and saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. It was the same look she'd seen the first night they'd worked late together, the same vulnerability that had made her start falling for him in the first place. And despite everything, despite the lies and betrayal and manipulation, she realized that look had always been real. The elevator doors closed between them, and Maya wondered if she would ever see Damien Kane again. 6 months later, Maya stood in the visitor's room at Federal Correctional Institution, Sheridan, watching Damien Kane walk through the security door in standard prison khaki. The man who had once commanded boardrooms and built empires now looked smaller somehow. But his eyes still held that familiar intensity that had first drawn her to him. "You came," he said, sitting across from her at the metal table. "I almost didn't." Maya's voice was steady, controlled. The months of therapy and legal battles had taught her to armor herself against the complicated emotions Damien still evoked. "How are you holding up?" Damien shrugged. "Better than I deserve. The other inmates mostly leave me alone. Turns out having a reputation for taking down arms dealers earns you a certain amount of respect, even in here." Maya studied his face, noting new lines around his eyes, the way his dark hair had grown longer without its usual perfect styling. "Lila asks about you sometimes." Something flickered across Damien's expression. "How is she?" "Good. Really good, actually. The new treatment facility is smaller, more personal. She likes her therapist." Maya paused, choosing her words carefully. "The insurance settlement from the wrongful death suit is covering her care now. She doesn't know about your involvement in the payments. She shouldn't have to carry that burden." They sat in silence for several moments, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between them. Maya could hear other conversations around the room, families trying to maintain connections across the divide of incarceration. Love complicated by circumstance and choice. "I testified at Vaughn's sentencing hearing last week," Maya said finally. Damien's head snapped up. "I thought you were done with all the legal proceedings." But Agent Morrison called and said my testimony might help ensure he gets the maximum sentence." Maya's smile was sharp. 30 years to life. He won't be threatening anyone's family again. "Maya, I need you to know. Stop." Maya held up her hand. "I didn't come here for apologies, Damien. Came here to tell you something." She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick legal document. "I've been offered a position with the International Criminal Court in The Hague, prosecuting war crimes and crimes against humanity." Damien's eyes widened. "It's incredible. It's exactly the kind of work you've always wanted to do." "Yes, it is. And I'm taking it." Maya paused, watching his reaction. "But first I wanted to tell you that I understand now." "Understand what?" Maya leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I understand why you made the choices you made. The guilt you carried, the impossible situation Vaughn put you in, the way you tried to protect everyone while destroying yourself. In the process," she took a shaky breath, "it doesn't excuse what you did, but I understand it." Tears gathered in Damien's eyes, the first emotion she'd seen him display since he'd been sentenced. "Maya, I also understand that loving someone doesn't mean forgiving them everything. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to keep loving them the same way." Maya's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "What we had was real, Damien. The feelings, the connection, the way we saw each other when we thought no one else was looking. But it was also built on lies and trauma and guilt. We can't build a future on that foundation. Damien nodded slowly, understanding passing between them like a shared language. So this is goodbye? This is goodbye to what we were. But not to what we meant to each other. Maya stood, smoothing down her skirt with hands that had learned to be steady in courtrooms and conference rooms. I'll always be grateful that you showed me I was strong enough to survive losing everything that mattered to me. And I'll always be grateful that you showed me what it felt like to be seen as more than my worst decisions. Damien stood as well, and for a moment they faced each other across the small space between their worlds. Take care of yourself, Damien Kane. Kane, care of yourself, Maya Chen. Change the world. Maya walked toward the exit without looking back, but at the door she paused. Damien? Yes? When you get out of here, find me, not to continue what we had, but to show me who you've become. I'd like to meet that person. She left him standing in the visitor's room, surrounded by the echoes of other people's conversations about love and loss and the complicated ways people try to hold on to each other across impossible distances. Outside, the Oregon rain was gentle against Maya's face as she walked to her rental car. In 3 weeks, she would be on a plane to the Netherlands, beginning a career that would take her around the world, prosecuting the kind of crimes that had nearly destroyed her life. Lila was stable and thriving. Settlement money had secured her future. The nightmares were fading. Maya started the engine and pulled out of the prison parking lot, watching the facility disappear in her rearview mirror. She thought about justice and mercy, about the way love could survive betrayal and transform into something different but equally profound. She thought about the man she was leaving behind and the woman she was becoming. For the first time in months, Maya Chen smiled without reservation. The road ahead stretched endlessly forward, full of possibilities she was finally brave enough to pursue. At the end.